Tiny podium. All right, I'm cold, so I might be chattering up here. Okay. So the word I got today is happy. And so the definition of happy is feeling or showing pleasure or contentment. And after reading a little bit of the word, I found that the joy of the Lord is in rejoicing in His existence or His presence in your life. So the verse I focused on was Psalm 68:11. And it reads, "The Lord gave the word, great was the company of those that published it." So I want to start with the troubles. So in our lives, we face troubles and issues that rob us of our joy. And it seems like these troubles are like never ending, and they try to push us to our breaking point. And it seems to distance us from God. But it feels like when one issue begins, it doesn't end before another issue is on the horizon. Like, almost as if, like I remember I was in college and I got sick one morning. It was like 5 a.m. So we had to call the ambulance. I went to the hospital. It wasn't serious. But I had to miss 3 days of work. The ambulance cost $250 for a 5-minute ride. And then I'm trying to, help pay for my tuition, and I can't do it. So I'm going through these little issues that keep mounting up to, this little mountain. And I'm like, so what's going on? And we get so caught up in negativity that we don't have, the energy to keep up, to keep fighting. And it hurts us, and it feels like we can't trust people. We feel alone, and we struggle to find the peace in the situation. But I start questioning, and I'm like, yo, you told me to fight. You told me to pick up my armor. You told me to do this and that. And every time I fight, I'm getting exhausted. And every time I fight, it's like another challenge is coming my way. Like, where is my peace? And when you do that, that's when you learn to recognize the trouble coming. But if you look at the battle that way, you've already lost. So in Jeremiah 6:1 in the Bible, it says that they used to use signals for trouble coming, and they would use fire and trumpets. And these signals would send a message to the people who were in trouble, and it would tell them that danger was coming. But God's message is a little bit different. See, in Psalm 68, it talks about the provisions of God and how He helped His people, the Israelites, both in the wilderness, coming out of Egypt, and in Canaan. And in Psalm 68:11, it talks about this company. And this company can be translated to an army of people. And these people fought, taught, and died to send God's message out. And these were the real people, the real worshipers. But then I found the translation, and it went from the Lord gave the word, great was the company of those that published it, to the Lord announces the word, and the women who proclaimed it are mighty and strong. So originally there's this word, Hambassaroth, a.k.a. those who published it. And it's a feminine translation of the messengers. And so I searched other times when women were used in context of war in the Bible, and I found Exodus 15:20-21, and it said that Miriam and the women celebrated their deliverance from Egypt. And in 1 Psalms 18:6-7, it talked about how the women celebrated after David slayed Goliath. And so over and over again, I was finding these verses of praise and victory. So I'm like, okay. But in Psalms, in this verse, it's talking about how the women came to warn the warriors and how they came to tell them, trouble was coming. And they came to wake the warriors. So this is a different message. See, God sent a message of celebration and victory even before the battle started. The true victory in God does not wait until the battle is over. Once God shows up, the victory is already ours. So my mom used to tell me this story. She still tells it. And she talks about how she got chased home by these girls for some reason that probably wasn't her fault. And she talked about how she was going home, but she was going home because she knew her sisters and her brothers were there, so she wasn't about to get jumped. But she talks about when she turned the corner to her block, she didn't even see her sisters and brothers. All she saw was her dad just standing there. He was just standing there. He wasn't doing nothing. He didn't even see her at first. But the fact that she saw him standing there, she was like, wait, why am I running? Why am I scared? And that's the mentality we need to have, because it's do you know who my father is? Do you know who's behind me? You don't have to wait until after the battle to praise God for what you've got, because if you wait for God to show up after, you've already missed the chance to be in His presence during the issue. See, the reason why you're exhausted after the trial is not because you're ill-equipped, it's because you're fighting the battle wrong. You're afraid to lose. You're staying up every night waiting for that call that's never going to come because God has already got it done. You checking your phone for stuff that's never going to happen because God is like, I got your son, I got your daughter, I got your mom, I got whoever you worrying about. See, when God shows up, it's yours. In Acts 16:25, Paul and Silas were in prison, and they didn't wait to see the outcome. They didn't wait until they were out of prison. See, their praise was the result of their deliverance. They praised, and that's what got them delivered. See, when you praise your way through something, the end looks very different from when you started. The end looks very different from being exhausted and hurt. See, when you praise, it's not like, oh man, like, I wonder what's going to happen. Like, it's like, yo, who's next? Like, what's going on? Like, who's next? And you've been getting to be encouraged and excited and take joy in the Lord. So when the women came, they didn't come like one time. See, this commentary that explained that the worship of God's people was successive. And it wasn't just that single time. And I believe that when God comes, when He speaks, He reveals something to us, like a little bit of something. And when you look for His glory, you will begin to understand that the joy of the Lord is already here. The commentary writes that their deliverance was so glorious that they broke into worship. So imagine seeing something in front of you like, oh, I got to pay this bill, but I can't because I'm not making enough. And then God saying, like, everything is paid off. Imagine seeing that. That's how you should break into worship right before the battle even starts. See, the song will say, morning by morning, every mercy I see. And that's because a life of joy does not just mean a life without pain or a life without suffering. Because when you put God first, when you praise God before you even think about fighting, you already have the victory waiting. Notice that the men or the warriors who were awakened, they were awakened and they were not afraid. Because when they heard the women, they recognized the song of celebration. See, these women carried the voice of God. And when they heard the voice of God, they knew what they were doing because this army was no regular army. They were preachers, they were praise warriors, they were prayer warriors. So when God called, they were not confused or afraid. They recognized His voice and therefore recognized their victory. See, the way to happiness is through the joy of God. That means that you must have a relationship with God. That God, in order to recognize His call, even after the call, pick up your sword and shield and in confidence that God is with you. Faith without work is dead. You must stand in order to claim your victory. So claim your victory. That's it.
It's new. When Pastor first walked up to me, for the first time in 17 and a half years, Pastor said, "Thank you, D." He has never called me D ever. It's usually Dyana or, hey, Di. So I thought that was so funny. But the guy has been giving me things about new all year. So when he first told me, I almost picked year, but I said, no, new is for me. So giving honor to God, to my pastors, to all the ministers on the roster. If I had to give my words a title, it would be Try Something New. My scriptures are John 13 and 34. It's a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. Isaiah 65 and 17, for behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things will not be remembered or come to mind. Ezekiel 11 and 19 speaks on having a new heart. Revelation 21 and 2, and I saw a holy city, New Jerusalem, coming out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride, adorned for her husband. One of the most heard and familiar scriptures is 2 Corinthians 5 and 17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creature. The old things passed away. Behold, all things are become new. It's funny, when I kept reading it over and over, it's like God kept giving me stories. So I remember a story. It was about Christmas 1976. No, I'm not going to tell you how old I was, but anyway, it was 76. And I remember this Christmas so well. When my brothers and I came downstairs, it was so many gifts under our tree. We all got new robes. My brother David got a new bike, motorcycle. It was cool. I loved dolls when I was little. And this particular Christmas, I wanted a doll named Thumbelina. This doll looked like me. And I wanted her because she could roll over. I loved all of my old dolls, but it was something about getting that new doll. I also got a beautiful carriage to push her around in, and I was so happy. It was a wonderful Christmas. That memory made me think of how we feel how we would feel we ran downstairs on Christmas morning, and everything that we opened was old. One box had an old pair of shoes in it. Another box had an old sweater. Another had an old toy. How do you think you would feel? Pretty sad or mad, right? Well, I believe that's how God feels when we quote 2 Corinthians 17, and nothing that we do that's old has become new. If your old ways was being jealous or envious, try something new. Know that the same God that blessed others can bless you too. If your old way was being mean, try being kind and loving. If your old way was gossiping, learn how to be prayerful. If your old way was frowning, learn how to smile. I could go on and on and on. And another thing that came to mind, how, people get in a car and they say, wow, this new car, I love the new car smell. I have never heard anyone say, wow, my old car smells the bomb. It smells so great. And I was in somebody's car one day, and it had an air freshener said that new car smell. I said, how in the world did they come up with that scent? It's a new car scent, really? Also, I thought of women can have 50 or more pairs of shoes, but it's something about that new pair of shoes. Yes. It's something about it. Yes, I know that's right. So, all right, let me get back on. So, I just wanted to end with this. So, in 2018, instead of just saying out with the old, in with the new, really mean it. Try something new. Stop quoting 2 Corinthians 17 and really do something new. I feel like, every year we do the same traditions. We do this, we do that. We say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Try something new. Sometimes something new is what we should do. It just, even if it's just speaking to somebody you never spoke before. Try something new. If it's being, I just feel like trying something new works for me. And I know that God will bless you. And, just like I said, if you're mean, try being nice. It does. God will do a new thing. So if you ever feel like, oh my God, I'm so sick of doing everything all the time, try something new. Try something new. And I just pray that blesses somebody.
Can y'all hear me okay? All right. Good to see everybody out here on this brisk night. When I got this assignment from Pastor, he said, hey, Brother Marek, I want to talk to you. I'll wait till you finish eating first. I ain't want to eat after that. And normally I don't like to miss no meals, but, I received the assignment year and, looking at a lot of things. And the one thing that does resonate with me is that the way I thought about it, the way you look at your year determines how you come out of your year. So the dictionary defines the word year as the time taken by a planet to make one revolution around the sun, which most of us know is a 365-day cycle, or 366 if you count in leap years. But this was really key. From the 1st of January, used for reckoning time of ordinary affairs. But I'm going to come back to that later. In the Hebrew translation, the word year, which is pronounced Sharneh, is defined as a revolution of time. The word year was actually, I found this in the Bible 367 times across 322 verses. So it took me, let's just say it took me a while. Which truly demonstrates its importance. The word is also inclusive to define age of peoples, length of reigning of kings, and widely used to define length of ordinances. Now, God establishes this throughout the Bible to ensure that His divine order is maintained. For an example, 2 Samuel 5:4 says, David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. That's a long time. And again, in Exodus 13, around verses 8 through 10, an annual ordinance was set forth by the Lord through Moses with the escape from Egypt to acknowledge the remembrance of deliverance. And in Leviticus 25, this is where it got really interesting, with the year of Jubilee. Now, if you're familiar with the year of Jubilee, it included canceling debts, freeing slaves, returning original owners to all the land that had been sold. But even though the year of Jubilee was meant to be celebrated every 50 years, during the year it was to be acknowledged, it still had an established set of guidelines to govern it. So it wouldn't be great if like all three credit unions, like TransUnion, Experian, Equifax, said, listen, every such and such year we're gonna zero everybody out. Everybody gonna get 800 credit score. I believe it. I'm touching and agreeing with you on that one. That would be great. I ain't even gonna hold you. But these guidelines were important to follow, especially with the provisions of the seventh year. I'm going to read from Leviticus 25, verses 18 to 22, where it says, Wherefore ye shall do my statutes and keep my judgments and do them, and ye shall dwell in the land in safety. And the land shall yield her fruit, and ye shall eat your fill and dwell therein in safety. And if ye shall say, What shall we eat the seventh year? Behold, what shall we sow, nor gather our increase? So God came back with, Then I will command my blessing upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years. So they all get 7 to get you 9. He said, but I'm going to hook y'all up in the 6th. So y'all ain't got to worry about it. And ye shall sow the 8th year, and eat yet of the old fruit until the 9th year, until her fruits come in, ye shall eat of the old store. Well, it's like, okay. They was eating good, y'all. They was eating real good. But all they had to do was follow the blueprint that God gave them. And then I was reading this, it reminded me, like, part of my job responsibilities, I have to interview people like plumbers, masons, stuff like that. And they ask about the pay. Even though it was on the job posting, you know, it's like, well, why the pay? It's like, well, you got to wait 3 years. And I tell them, I said, you got to wait 3 years. They look at me like I got 3 heads. I'm like, so I said, listen, I said, after your first year, you get an increase. Then after your second year, you get an increase. After your third year, you get a max rate. So y'all looking at me probably like, Marek, what that got to do with anything? It's simple. You got to endure the process to get where you want to be. Sometimes that increase, that blessing, that deliverance, what you may think it feel like a year, it may feel like a year even longer. I mean, I can tell you from experience, I was on night shift for 7 years, y'all, and I didn't like it. But it felt like an eternity. It felt like an eternity. So earlier I mentioned reckoning time when I talked about the definitions of year. Well, in the Greek translation, reckoning translates as logizomai, which means to take an inventory and account of or to think on. So you go to 1 Corinthians 4:1, it says, Let a man so account of us as the ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Each day, God presents us with needs and opportunities that challenge us to do what we know is right. As we embark on the new year, we need not be ordinary, but extraordinary, especially when it comes to being about our Father's business. Well, Romans 12:11 and 12 says, Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continually instant in prayer. So I'm going to close with this. It doesn't matter where your year begins or ends. It's how you endure through the process that counts. The way you look at your year determines how you come out of your year. Thank you.